Thank you. Okay, and you saw a water drip.
Yes, very fine little drizzle coming.
You saw water dripping, and according to my complaint, you had seen around the neighborhood a truck, Foy's Plumbing.
Yes, I have.
And that's how you got to Mr. Foy.
Correct. My neighbor had used him.
Did you speak to the neighbor, or did you just remember seeing the truck?
No, I spoke to my neighbor.
Okay. Can you tell me on what date you noticed the leak and on what date you spoke to the neighbor?
Probably around the 10th or so of December.
That was in a shower that you don't use, but your husband uses?
I'm widowed.
Okay, so who told you about the leak?
The housekeeper.
Okay. And then did you check it yourself?
Yes.
And this small leak had been there for a couple of weeks before you got to Mr. Foy.
Correct.
Listen, Mr. Shelton.
I know, that's
Mr.
why I
Shelton,
turned the water
Mr.
off.
Shelton, you're not being a two-process thinker, sir. Let me explain something to you. I came to California from Connecticut to the place where we live in California. I walked into the master bath, to the toilet, et voila, I see a puddle of water around the toilet. I say to myself, Self, you went to law school. You don't know what this is. But it's not a leak that's coming from the back. It's a leak that looks like his number. And you called him?
Yes, I did.
And that was in April of 2021?
Yes.
Where did you live at the time?
Detroit, Michigan.
And you, sir?
Colton, California.
When was the first time you actually saw each other?
April of 2021.
You live in Michigan,
Yes.
but you have a child who lives in California.
I do.
How old is that child?
21.
Male or female?
Male.
And where does he live now?
With his dad.
When you come down to see him, where do you stay?
In the past, sometimes I would stay with his dad, and sometimes I would stay in a hotel.
So when you visited him, you either stayed with his father or your ex-husband?
Yes.
Or stayed in a hotel?
Yes.
Depending upon the circumstance. Most of the time, did you stay at the house with his father, or most of the time in a hotel?
Most of the time, in the past, I stayed in the house with his father.
And is this his father's only child as well?
We have 2 children together.
2 children? Mm-hmm. Where's the other child?
She's in Chicago, Illinois.
How old is she?
26.
So you see her less frequently than you see your son?
I probably see them about the same.
Do you go to visit her in Chicago?
That's fine with me. And then I agreed to let him continue to park there as long as there was no tire marks. That's what it was. And then he built this thing.
Well, he formalized parking there. Mm-hmm. Okay. At what point did Miss Benedum tell you that she was not going to sell you the property?
This actually started on 4/3 of 18.
I'm not interested. I'm interested in the beginning of these texts,
Okay.
where you clearly had discussions. Trees were removed. I don't quite understand why she allowed you to remove the trees, and I don't understand the whole transaction.
Because it wasn't my...
It's coming from the bottom. So I called engineering. Fortunately, I live in a place where somebody will come up. They came up right away. The first thing they did was turn off the water. Smart, just like you did. Then they opened up the problem, looked at the problem, and said, we need a part. Unfortunately, those are not the same parts that we keep in the hotel. We'll have to order it. Turned off the water. Use a different bathroom. For the 2-3 days it needs to get the part. You weren't there. So just pay attention to me, Mr. Foy. You weren't there. I'm just letting you know what common sense is living on the planet for a long time. If you have a leak that's caused by a faulty part.
Legally parking on her property.
Okay, so far all I have that you paid was $450 for the deeds, $800 for the survey, and gravel to be delivered.
I got the gravel in there. I also have the concrete that I had laid, flowers and stuff that I put in.
Did he pay part of having the tree stumps removed?
We split the cost and the labor of removing the debris of the trees.
No, ma'am,
What?
that's not true.
Who wanted the trees removed?
I never had a problem with the trees. I
not
like the
true.
trees.
Don't speak.
He wanted the trees cut down so he could have more space. He was already parking underneath the trees with a smaller trailer, just not his truck. He wanted more space, so he came to me and said, hey, what if I split the cost of the cutting of the trees? I said, that's fine, I'll split the cost.
You, and you were a full-time employee of Foy's Plumbing. Tell me what happened when you got there.
When I first got there, I noticed water running out of the handle.
It was dripping out of the handle because it had been there since December 10th.
It was streaming out. It was a pretty decent stream of water coming out.
The plaintiff doesn't use that shower, correct? So the first thing that someone would have done, even me, is turn off the water. Is that what you did?
Well, I wanted to go see what the leak really was.
Well, you looked.
Yeah. first, and then I went out and shut the water off, and then came back in to pull the cartridge to identify. And there's no markings on the plate, so I couldn't really tell exactly what brand it was. We do carry a variety of brands, but more of your typical.
You're getting too technical with me,
okay.
sir.
Okay.
This is what the case is about. He came out the same day, the 28th. He said he didn't have the part. You have other complaints about his behavior on that day. You say was a little bit off. He left without a different part being put in. And you called another plumber? When?
I called actually my contractor that night to come over and look at it. He came over in the morning, which
So
is
he didn't come over that night. He came over the next day.
correct. The next morning, he gave me
Now,
a
you can't tell me
referral.
what he gave you. He's not here. It is your claim that because of